My name is Eleanor Price, and I am 59 years old. For 3 decades, Thanksgiving has been my stage. The clatter of pans, the hum of the oven, the smell of sage and butter filling the house. I thought this year would be no different. Early in the afternoon, I was standing in my kitchen in New Hampshire, basting the turkey and setting the good china. When the phone rang, it was my son, Michael. His voice carried that polished calm he always put on when he wanted something. "Mom, just confirming dinner. We'll all be there. Oh, and Dad asked if he could stop by early. He has some documents you need to sign. Nothing major." My hand stilled over the roasting pan. Documents. That wasn't the language of family. It was the language of business. "What kind of documents?" I asked. "Something about the lake house," he answered quickly. "Just a formality. Mom, don't worry." But I did worry. That lake house wasn't just real estate. It was the place where my children learned to swim, where Richard and I once believed in forever, where memories clung to the walls like the scent of pine and campfire. I hadn't stepped foot there in years, yet it was still part of me. "Fine," I said slowly. "Tell him to come at 3. After I hung up, the silence in my kitchen pressed in on me. The turkey hissed softly in the oven, and the table gleamed with silver polished the night before, but none of it felt right. I had hosted Thanksgiving for nearly my entire adult life, but for the first time, I felt more like a pawn than a host. I leaned against the counter, staring at the yellow notepad where I had scribbled reminders: extra gravy, fresh rolls, apple pie cooling on the sill. Nowhere on that list did it say sign papers. A flicker of doubt stirred inside me. Something was coming, something larger than a holiday meal. I adjusted the apron at my waist and gripped the carving knife a little tighter. Whatever game Richard and the children were about to play, I knew I had to be ready. At exactly 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on the apron and opened the door to find Richard standing there, polished as ever. His coat was neatly buttoned, silver hair combed back, and a faint trace of cologne clung to him like he had just stepped out of a boardroom. For a moment, I almost forgot this was the same man I had once shared a bed and a life with. "Eleanor," he said with a smile that never reached his eyes, "you look well." "Come in," I replied, stepping aside. He walked through my living room as though he still owned it, glancing at the framed photos and books stacked by the fireplace. I led him to the parlor, where the fire snapped and popped, giving the room more warmth than his presence ever could. "You said you had something for me to sign?" I asked, settling into the armchair. "Yes, just a quick formality," he said, pulling a sleek envelope from his leather briefcase. "Developers need both co-owners of the lake house to sign. Nothing complicated." "Developers?" The word landed sharp on my tongue. "What exactly are they developing? A resort, golf course, high-end project. Very profitable," he replied smoothly. "You're selling it?" My voice was flat, though my pulse thudded. Richard hesitated, then gave a nod. "It's been unused for years. Eleanor, this is the best offer we'll ever get." I gripped the armrest. That house was not just lumber and shingles, it was summers on the dock, rainy weekends of board games, birthdays lit by candles and laughter. It was ours, built in the middle of our marriage, not his alone. "You should have told me," I said. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. "Let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be." I sat back, staring at the sealed envelope on the table between us. For the first time in years, I felt the spark of defiance burn hot in my chest. By 4 o'clock, the house began to fill with voices and the shuffle of coats being hung by the door. Michael arrived first with Laura and their teenage son, Evan. Laura carried a pie balanced carefully in her hands, while Michael set a bottle of wine on the counter as though that gesture alone excused the tension still lingering from our earlier call. Evan gave me a quick hug before wandering off to find the dog, his lanky frame already leaning toward manhood. Not long after, Claire breezed in, her heels clicking on the hardwood, her blazer sharper than the November wind outside. She introduced a man at her side, Derek, her business partner, she said. He gave me a firm handshake, but his eyes roamed the room like he was appraising it for resale. The biggest surprise came when Anna stepped through the door. She lived states away and had always kept her distance after the divorce. But there she was, hair tucked behind her ears, carrying a small overnight bag. She hugged me tightly, whispering, "I hope it's okay I came." "Of course," I said, holding her longer than I meant to. It had been far too long. The dining room gleamed with the good china I had set out that morning, the candles flickering low against the polished silver. The turkey rested proudly at the center of the table, steam rising as I brought out bowls of mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables, and the cranberry sauce I'd made from scratch. For a moment, as everyone gathered and the chairs scraped against the floor, I let myself believe this was still the family I once knew. Laughter rose, glasses clinked, and talk drifted easily. Yet beneath it all, I felt the weight of Richard's envelope still waiting in the parlor, its presence like a shadow at the edge of the feast. The plates were passed, silverware clinked, and the turkey carved cleanly under my knife. For a few minutes, the room felt almost ordinary, the kind of Thanksgiving I had always hoped for. Children gathered, candles flickering, food warming the air with spice and butter. Then Richard raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he announced, his voice smooth and commanding, "and to family, in whatever form it takes." Glasses lifted, a chorus of "to family" echoed around the table. I touched my glass to Anna's and forced a smile, though the words settled heavy in my stomach. As conversation resumed, Michael cleared his throat. He looked at Laura before speaking, his hand resting firmly over hers. "We have some news," he said. "I've accepted a new position at Dad's firm. We'll be relocating to Zurich in a few months." I set down the serving spoon. "Zurich? It's a wonderful opportunity." Laura chimed in quickly. "Better schools for Evan, better resources, and the package includes a housing stipend. Part of the funds from the lake house sale will help us get settled." The room stilled around me, though no one else seemed surprised. Before I could respond, Claire leaned forward, her voice bright, eager. "And Derek and I are planning an expansion for our startup. We thought a portion of the proceeds could serve as early capital. It would mean so much to have family support." I glanced around the table, one by one, at the familiar faces of my children, at Derek's easy confidence, at Richard's quiet smirk. My hands rested in my lap, knuckles tight against the linen napkin. It struck me then, this meal, this gathering, was less a reunion and more a meeting. They weren't here to celebrate Thanksgiving. They were here to inform me of decisions already made, decisions that carved me out of the picture entirely. I let the silence hang, my fork untouched, the food cooling on my plate. Finally, I spoke, my voice steady though my chest burned. "So you've all sat here, in my home, eating at my table, and decided that the lake house, the place your father and I built together, will be sold without so much as asking me." Michael shifted in his chair, his jaw tightening. "Mom, it's not like that. We just thought—" "You thought wrong," I cut in. "That house isn't just a piece of property. It carries our history, our memories. You don't get to carve me out of it." Richard leaned forward, folding his hands as though he were presiding over a board meeting. "Eleanor, this is about legacy. It's about planning for the next generation. Don't let your emotions cloud what's best for the family." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that startled even me. "Legacy? This isn't about legacy. This is about control. You've dressed it up with polite words, but it's the same old game you've always played." Michael's face flushed. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said, his voice rising. "Dad offered you a clean way out. We're trying to include you, not fight you." "Include me?" I leaned forward, my gaze locked on his. "You decided everything without me. That isn't inclusion. That's ambush." The word cracked through the room. Chairs creaked, forks stilled. Even Evan froze mid-bite. Michael pushed back from the table, his palms slamming down on the wood. In a sudden, violent motion, his hand struck across my cheek. The sound rang louder than the breaking china beneath my elbow as I stumbled back against the sideboard. Gasps erupted. Anna shot to her feet. Claire covered her mouth. My skin burned where his hand had landed, but I did not cry. I straightened, the room spinning with shock, and lifted my chin. The sting on my cheek pulsed hot, but I forced my hand to stay steady as I touched the mark. Gasps still lingered in the air, the clatter of broken china echoing in everyone's ears. Michael's chest heaved, his face pale with the sudden realization of what he had done. I drew in a slow breath and let a thin smile curve across my lips. "Thank you," I said quietly. His brows knitted. "What?" "You've just shown everyone exactly who you are, and who I've been all these years." I turned toward the cabinet beside the fireplace and opened the drawer where I had placed a leather folder earlier that morning. My fingers trembled, but not from fear, only from the weight of what was coming. Carrying it back to the table, I laid it down with deliberate calm. Richard's eyes narrowed. "What is that?" "Proof," I said simply. I opened the folder and slid the first document across the table. The lake house deed. 3 years ago, during that audit at your company, you signed a set of transfer papers brought by your assistant. Maybe you didn't read them carefully. Maybe you assumed it was routine, but you signed them in front of witnesses. The lake house has been in my name alone ever since. Richard's face drained of color. He grabbed the paper, scanning the signatures, his jaw tightening. "This is a forgery." "It's legal, Richard," I replied. "Filed and notarized. Check the county records if you doubt me." The silence was heavy, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Then I reached for the second stack, thicker, heavier. I laid it down beside the deed. "And this," I said, my voice low but sharp, "is the audit I commissioned 2 years ago. Every shell account, every hidden transfer, every dollar you thought was buried." Richard's hand shook as he pushed the papers away, his polished composure slipping for the first time in years. His eyes darted toward Michael, as if searching for backup, but my son had already collapsed into his chair. The red mark on my cheek glowed in the candlelight, a silent reminder of what he had done. "I don't believe this," Michael muttered, his voice hollow. You planned this?" "Yes," I said, "for once. I planned for myself." Claire's fork clattered onto her plate. Her face had gone pale, her blazer hanging loose on her shoulders as if her confidence had drained with the color in her cheeks. "Mom, you can't mean to destroy everything. This is Dad's reputation, Michael's career. This is my life," I cut in. "Do you know what your father tried to arrange after the divorce? He wanted me declared unstable. He had a psychiatrist lined up, ready to sign the papers. One phone call, and I would have been locked away while he kept everything." Claire gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Derek shifted uncomfortably beside her, staring at the table as if wishing he were anywhere else. Anna's chair scraped back. She moved to my side, slipping her arm through mine. Her voice shook, but her eyes held steady. "I believe you. Mom." The fire snapped, shadows dancing across the walls, and for once Richard had no words to cover the silence. His empire of polished speeches and smooth smiles collapsed into stillness. I looked around the table at the faces I had once loved more than anything, and for the first time, I didn't feel small or outnumbered. I felt the strength of truth pressing through me, heavier than the years of silence I had carried. The next morning, I walked into the office of Janet Miller, my college roommate turned attorney. The space was quiet and elegant, lined with dark shelves and a wide glass desk that caught the pale November light. Janet stood as soon as she saw me, her eyes softening at the sight of the bruise on my cheek. "Eleanor, good Lord, are you all right?" "I've been better," I answered, forcing a thin smile. "But I'm ready." We sat down, and she slid a folder across the desk. "The documents we prepared are all here. Once you sign, the Price Legacy Trust becomes active. Your home, the lake house, retirement accounts, everything you choose will be shielded. Neither Richard nor the children can contest it." I uncapped the pen and signed each page carefully. With every stroke, I felt the weight on my chest ease, as if chains I hadn't realized I wore were snapping free. "And this," I said, reaching into my bag, "is a flash drive, audio recordings, proof that Richard planned to have me committed, with a psychiatrist willing to falsify papers." Janet's expression hardened. "This will be invaluable if they try to push further." She tapped at her computer. "Restraining orders are drafted as well. They'll be served tomorrow morning, accompanied by law enforcement, and if you decide, the whistleblower package can be sent to the SEC, the IRS, even the Department of Justice." "Not yet," I said firmly. "Give him a chance to choose. If he returns what he took and steps back, I won't need to go public." Janet nodded slowly. "But if he doesn't—" "Then," I finished, my voice steady, "we go scorched earth." 2 days later, the first wave hit. Law enforcement served the restraining orders at Richard's estate just after sunrise. While another team delivered notices to Michael's home, Janet kept me updated with every step, her voice crisp over the phone. By noon, my phone lit up with frantic calls. Michael's voice trembled in one voicemail, half anger, half desperation. Claire sent 3 texts in a row, each one shorter and more panicked than the last. Even Anna tried once, though she left no message. Richard, however, stayed silent. The silence didn't last. That afternoon, I received a call from John Peterson, chairman of the pharmaceutical company Richard still clung to. His tone was clipped, strained. "Ms. Price, we've received a packet of financial documents regarding Mr. Turner. Are they authentic?" "They are," I answered. "And you're willing to testify to how you obtained them?" "Yes." There was a pause heavy enough to weigh down the line. "Then we have no choice. Internal and federal investigations will follow. This will not remain private." By evening, news broke across the financial press. Headlines scrolled in bold, "Turner steps down amid allegations of misconduct." His once polished image unraveled in hours, unraveling decades of carefully built power. Michael called again that night. "Mom, please don't do this." His voice cracked. "Dad's unraveling. You don't know what you've set in motion." But I did know. I had known from the moment his hand struck my face at the dinner table. This was not destruction for its own sake. It was consequence. I set the phone down, letting his voice fade into silence. For once, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. The truth and the law were speaking for me now. The weeks that followed were a blur of messages I didn't answer. My phone filled with voicemails, each one a mixture of guilt, anger, and pleading. Michael's voice was the most persistent. Some nights he sounded furious, blaming me for his ruined career, accusing me of betrayal. Other times he broke down, begging me to reconsider, insisting he never meant for things to go so far. I listened once, just once, and then deleted them all. His words were not for me, but for his own conscience. Claire tried too. She sent a long email full of apologies and explanations, claiming she only wanted to build something for herself, that she thought the lake house money would be the foundation of her independence. But beneath her carefully chosen words, I could hear the panic. Derek had walked away as soon as the storm hit, leaving her with nothing but debts and unanswered calls. Anna reached out only once. A letter came in the mail, her handwriting small and careful. "I hope you're at peace. Mom, I understand now more than I ever did." That was all she wrote. It was enough. The only voice I welcomed belonged to Evan. He showed up at my door one Saturday morning with a bag of groceries and that easy teenage grin. "Grandma," he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. He spent the afternoon helping me rake leaves, then sat with me on the back porch, quiet but present. He didn't ask questions. He didn't press for answers. He simply stayed, listening to the wind in the trees, making me feel less alone. In him, I saw not betrayal or ambition, but the simple loyalty I had longed for. 6 months later, the lake house belonged to me in more than name. It was my sanctuary. The air smelled of pine and freshly cut grass, the water rippling with afternoon light. I had sold the old house in town, donated most of what was inside, keeping only a few letters, a stack of books, and the photographs that still meant something. The rest, I let go. I spent my mornings on the dock with a cup of coffee, listening to the loons call across the water. Evenings were quieter than I ever remembered, but they didn't feel empty. Evan came by often, bringing groceries or just a smile. Sometimes his girlfriend joined him, and together they sat at the edge of the dock, dangling their feet in the water like children. They treated me not as a burden, not as an obstacle, but simply as family. One afternoon, Evan asked softly, "Do you ever think about forgiving them?" I watched the lake shimmer under the sun, remembering birthdays and summers past, the echoes of laughter that had once filled this place. "No," I said gently. "Some things aren't meant to be forgiven, not because of bitterness, but because healing sometimes means letting go of the people who hurt you." He nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon. I smiled, turning to him. "But I forgive myself for waiting too long, for believing I had to stay small to be loved. That part of me is gone." The breeze stirred, carrying the scent of pine across the water. For the first time in decades, I felt whole. Not with revenge, but with boundaries. Not with anger, but with clarity. And as the sun dipped lower, painting the lake in gold, I realized I had finally stepped into freedom. Looking back now, I see Thanksgiving not as the day my son struck me, but as the day I finally struck back, not with violence, but with truth. For years I had been the quiet presence, the one who set the table, lit the candles, made sure everyone else was fed before I took a bite. I thought that silence was love. I thought endurance was strength. But silence can become a cage, and endurance, when twisted, becomes surrender. When Michael's hand met my cheek, something inside me shattered, and something else was born. That moment did not break me. It revealed me. It showed me that my worth had never been tied to their approval, or their plans, or their image of who I should be. Richard lost his company. The children lost the certainty that I would always bend. And I lost nothing, because what I let go of was never really mine to begin with. What remained was the one thing they couldn't take, my choice to live differently. The lake house is quiet these days, but it is not lonely. I fill it with what matters: books stacked on the porch, Evan's laughter echoing across the water, evenings where the only sound is the wind moving through the pines. Peace doesn't always come from reconciliation. Sometimes it comes from release. If there is a lesson in my story, it is this: boundaries are not walls. They are doors. They allow us to step away from harm and into freedom. They remind us that love without respect is not love at all. I once believed my family defined me. Now I know I define myself. And as the sun sets each night over the lake, I whisper a quiet vow: never again will I shrink to fit someone else's comfort. Freedom, I've learned, isn't loud. It doesn't roar or rage. It settles in the chest like a steady heartbeat. And sitting here, with the water glittering before me, I finally know what it means to be free. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.